Okay, so we are good to go. Thank you very much for all those that have joined us this morning. This is the third time I've put this webinar on, and each time I actually put it on, I change it around because the world's moving so quickly at the moment that the webinar I put on 3 weeks ago, only half of it's relevant. So I've had to change things around to make sure that I'm helping business owners, HR professionals, accountancy professionals at the moment for where we're at right now to help them get to the next level. So when I first put this together, I decided to call the webinar Crisis Averted. Now, I don't really like using the word crisis, to be honest with you, because I prefer to view the whole situation as an opportunity. Now, I know that's not for everybody. A lot of people are viewing it 100% as a crisis. Some are viewing it as a challenge, and some are viewing it as an opportunity. And I think what I've seen happen over the last few weeks is a bit of a shift where pretty much everyone thought it was a crisis to begin with. And now people are starting to shift their thought patterns through to, hang on a minute, this thing is only temporary. We're going to be out of this in a few weeks' time. What are we actually doing to prepare our businesses now for where we're going to be in a few weeks' time, rather than just being scared about the here and now? So what I really want to do during this webinar this morning is to help every single person out there come up with at least 5 ideas that they can take away and action within their business right now to help them progress through the situation we're in at the moment. So I've got 16 steps lined up to help take you through from the survive mode that some of us are still in to a mode of thriving, which is where we're hoping to get to over the next few weeks as well. I know that not all 16 steps are going to be relevant to every single one of you, but what's important is you grab a pen, you make notes, and you take action, because otherwise there's little point in actually attending these webinars, right? So let's get started. So here's what we'll be covering. Firstly, an introduction to myself. I'm going to just explain to you who the hell I am and why I think I might be able to help you. We're going to ask you for a bit of interaction at certain points of this, so I hope you're willing to offer some ideas and suggestions and questions and challenges. So I'm going to ask you for your challenges after that, which is going to be really important for me to see exactly where you're at, so I know how I can help you best. We're going to go over 2 rules of the webinar, only 2, but they're really important, and the reason for that being is these 2 rules are going to help you get most value out of it. Next one, we're going to go over the 4 phases of the crisis. We need to be thinking 1 step ahead all the time. So we're going to go through just so we can get our heads in the right space to work out where we're at the moment, where we're going, and how we're going to actually transition between one phase to the next one. The next thing is we're going to go through 8 ways to improve a healthy mindset. Really, really important, the most important thing, as I'm going to go on to talk about. Then I'm going to go over the other 15 areas we can control. Like I said, they won't all be for everyone. I'm fully aware that some of you are working for larger organizations. You're maybe in an HR department, accounts department. I know a heck of a lot of you are business owners out there, maybe the majority. Some are one-man, one-woman bands. Some are owners of 100 to 200-man businesses. I know that. So I'm going to make sure that there's something for everybody out there. Now, in the early part of the actual webinar, we might find that some of the stuff isn't so relevant. So please, please, please don't switch off at that point, because wouldn't it be terrible if you found out further down the line you've missed out on something that could have really been beneficial for you and your business. But like I say, the majority of the points are going to be for everybody. We're also going to go through, near the end, I'm going to look at local business owners. So I'm based in Orpington in Kent. We're going to look at how local business owners, some of which are in very, very awkward industries to work in, have actually pivoted their business, have changed it around to get the very, very best out of it, and to make sure that they can actually progress through this situation and come out of it stronger than they went in some cases, which is amazing. And also right at the end, I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask questions, and also I'm going to show you the next steps you can take, how I might be able to help you, and how Maria and Joe might be able to help you. So Maria is going to be joining us a bit later on. She's an HR professional. She is a consultant at the HR department. She's going to be able to take you through any furloughing issues, anything like that, anything to do with HR, and she's going to answer live questions. So definitely hang around for the end. Jo Bell, Kent Businesswoman of the Year as well. She's joining us too, and she's going to handle any accounts-based questions, anything to do with funding, anything to do with cash flow that you're not sure about and you need clarification on right now, she's going to be here for you on this webinar. She's not an easy person to get through on the phone, as I know, so you're in a very fortunate position to be able to talk to her directly if you hang around to the end. The webinar, by the way, lasts for 2 hours, so you're going to be hearing from me for an hour and a half. You're going to be making notes, you're going to be coming up with action points, and then the last half an hour, that's when you're going to get the opportunity to ask myself, Joe, and Maria some questions that are pertinent to you and your business at the moment. So a little bit about myself. So who am I? So my name is Phil Chantry. I run a business coaching practice here in Orpington. I used to run a marketing agency for 17 years. And while I was running that marketing agency, we actually took the business through 2 recessions. Now, I'm not saying where we're at the moment will be a recession. It might be, it might not. This might be something we come out of as quickly as we've gone into it. Who knows? But the important thing to point out is that because I've led the business through 2 recessions, I've got a rough idea of what we need to focus our minds on now and what we need to look at for the future as well. So I'm hoping that some of the ideas I'm going to give you is based on my past experience and the things that I've done, and maybe some mistakes I've made along the way as well. So I am, like I say, I'm a business coach. What that means is that I help businesses firstly plan where they want to get to. I then help hold them to account each week, and I help support them each week to make sure that they're achieving the goals that they're setting themselves. I'm also talking through, acting as a sounding board, coming up with ideas and trying to make sure they're staying on track. So 2 of the photos on here, the one at the top and the middle of the screen is myself speaking at the Bromley Business Excellence Forum, an event I organised for 130 people back in March, when we were just about able to get together, which was great news for me, because if it was 2 weeks later, the whole thing would have been cancelled and it wouldn't have happened. You'll see most of the pictures on the screen of myself and my family though, and that's what I'm doing it for. And I'm sure that that's what most of you guys are doing it for as well. And I think that's really important, to connect with why we're actually in business ourselves, why we're doing what we do, why we're helping other people. Because if we haven't got a connection between what we're actually doing on a day-to-day basis and why we're doing it, sometimes we can lose a bit of direction and focus, and that can actually cause a big issue with our mindset. So just to give you a tiny bit more information before I move on, is the last 2 years before I sold the business, my marketing business, I was coached, and we put systems into the business to help it work without me. I'm now in the position where we sold the business for more than I thought we'd get for it. I thought, I'm too young to retire. What do I do now? I really enjoyed coaching. I really enjoyed being coached. So I thought, well, this is something that I could do. I can offer some value because I've actually been there and done that. I can actually help local business owners like yourselves get through the hurdles that are put in front of us. So I'd love you now, please, to key into the Q&A box your challenges that you've got right now, because every week this changes, and I would love to see some ideas and some just to see exactly where you're at the moment. That would be really helpful. I'm going to give you a couple of, I'm going to give you a minute or so to get those in, and I shall read out a couple of them. So we're looking for the challenges that you're facing in your business right now. And see a couple of them coming in already. Okay, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to get through. So Jeanette has added events industry, no events, no money coming in, you can't pay suppliers. Really big issue. There's a story I've got a bit later on about an event producer that's pivoting his business, that's making a difference. So you might be able to take something from that, Jeanette. I'm really hoping. Mary's put getting paid what the work is worth. I think that can be an issue at the moment as well, definitely. Kira's put, I work with small businesses on their marketing and PR. Right now, marketing is the last thing people want to invest in. I'm going to cover that actually, funnily enough. I'm sure how to get new clients. Thank you, Kira. So Jim's put, what will the world look like in, say, 3 months, and how do we interact with businesses to resonate with them? Our business's customer feedback. Very interesting. So I'm going to cover that too. David's put, to further promote my business around online marketing when I can't get out doing driving lessons. So I know David's a driving instructor. So hopefully we're going to come up with at least 2 or 3 of these 16 ideas are going to be beneficial to you. In fact, I would say more than 5, to be honest. So I want 5 action points from each of you. Kira's put, I'm pitching, but it feels insensitive. Very good point. I'm going to cover that off definitely. I think it's about 8 or 9 in. Robert's put, consultancy, how to develop business without on-ground meetings. I understand that totally from my point of view. Suzanne's put, my business is social events. Government announced yesterday this will be going on for a very long term. My concern now is no events, no work, 52 staff. I think this is a really difficult time for a lot of people out there. Some industries it's not that big a deal for. They're actually able to transition really easily, and others it's an absolute nightmare for, and I fully understand that. So the reason why I decided to call this webinar to focus on surviving and thriving is because I know that there are 2 sets of people on this webinar. Some are just looking at keeping their head above water, keeping the lights on, and others are looking to seize the opportunity and run with it. So I get that, and I'm going to try and make sure I don't ignore either sides of either sets of people. So Tony's put, biggest challenge, how to redevelop the client base when most contacts are either furloughed or not at work. I get that too. I've heard that as well, and many a time. Mortgage advisor Haley's put, everyone switched off on payment holidays, lenders not lending, income reduced or unknown for the future, doing something now, what could be different in the future. Funnily enough, I'm working with a mortgage lender at the moment, and we're coming up with ideas mortgage advisor, we're coming up with ideas as to how she can actually make the most of the current situation. Suzanne's put, weddings all cancelled through to mid-July, and now corporates are cancelling through to mid-September. So I can see a lot of you are in survival mode. Maybe some of the ones that are actually looking for opportunities rather than just surviving haven't typed in questions because maybe there's less of an urgent need for that at the moment. But I'm going to try and cover off as much as that as I possibly can. By the way, this is going to be quite fast moving, so I apologise for that. I want to get you as much information as possible in the next hour and a half, and then obviously in the half an hour questions after. So we're wrapping up at 11. I'm going to move quickly, but I am going to ask for more participation. So I'm going to be interested to see exactly what you say over the course of this webinar. So the first rule is 100%. Excuse me, I'll get my words out. 100% participation is what I'm looking for. The reason for that being, if you imagine a jumbo jet taking off a runway and they put anything less than 100% in, what's going to happen? They're going to end up merging with the scenery at the end of the runway, right? It's not going to work out. Likewise, I know full well, I can't see you. You might be on your phones at the moment texting. You might be answering emails. There are going to be parts of this webinar you're going to need to listen to because they're going to make a big difference to your business. If you're not giving 100% participation now, is it possible that you might actually miss out on a couple of tips and tricks that are going to help make a huge, huge difference to your business? Yes is the answer to that. I'm going to answer that for you, knowing that I can't see or hear you. The important thing is that we give it everything. So when I'm asking for questions, when I'm asking for ideas, we're all going to put ideas into the box. There are some points when we can help each other as well. It's not just a case of me throwing ideas at you. You might have ideas of how to answer other people's questions as well. By all means, use the Q&A box as much as you like. I won't get the opportunity to read out all the time going through it, but what I do want to do is go through it at the end of the webinar if we've got enough time and help people as much as I possibly can. But all I'm saying is 100% participation. I can't stress that enough. It's so important. So the 4 phases of the crisis at the moment, the first one I've crossed out because pre-lockdown, we've gone through that already. I think one of the key challenges people faced pre-lockdown was they weren't actually thinking, what am I actually going to do when we go into lockdown? So now we're in lockdown. The third phase we need to be considering is, what are we going to do when we go back to work? How's this actually going to pan out for us? What do we need to be doing now to prepare ourselves? Because if all we're doing is focusing on the present, this isn't going to be very helpful. So I'm going to go over a few different ideas on what we can do to prepare ourselves to getting back to the environment that we used to work in. And then the 4th phase. Now, these phases don't ring true for absolutely everybody. There are going to be people whose businesses are not suffering at the moment who are actually doing better than before. The important thing is that for the people that are suffering at the moment, their customers have dropped off. They're not getting the people through the door. We want to be in a position whereby when the customers return, we're ready for them. Some people's business is going to flatline for a couple of months, and we're going to need to look at things like cash flow, loans, grants, and what have you. But the thing is, for some of those businesses, and I know a lot of construction businesses are definitely falling into this bracket, is they know that when the customers come back, everything's going to go through the roof, and they're going to struggle in another way to actually fund the projects that are coming up, but also get enough manpower to actually run the projects as well. Everyone's different though. Number one step. So I'm going to go through the 16 steps quite quickly. Number one step, mindset. Listen, without mindset, we're nothing, right? So we can focus on cash flow, we can focus on staffing, we can focus on customer retention, we can focus on whatever we like. But believe me, if we haven't got our mindset right, we're nothing. None of this is relevant. If we haven't got our mindset right, we're nothing. So what I'm going to do is, rather than tell you all to be positive and then leave that with you, which would be a very glib comment and wouldn't be helpful at all, I'm going to come up with some ideas for you now that I'd like you to have a think about. Now, most of these ideas you're going to know already. There's a shock. So you think, well, hang on a minute, what's the point in actually sitting on this webinar? I'll tell you the reason why. It's because most of the ideas that you're going to know already, you're not doing. So what I want you to do is have a think about the stuff that I'm going to tell you where you're just telling yourself, yeah, I know that already. I'm going to ask you to think, am I actually doing this already? And is it going to help my mindset? So grab your pen. Remember, 100% participation. Make sure you're writing these notes down. Don't write down everything I say though, please, because I've done this before. I've gone to webinars, I've attended seminars, and I've made huge amounts of notes, and as a result, nothing's got done. So what I want to do is just make a note of the key things you want to change, and then go through the notes right at the end and put a tick next to the 5 action points that you intend to actually put into practice over the coming days and weeks. Number one tip. The quote that I found, it's not what happens to us that counts, it's how we deal with it. I've known staff members to spill a cup of tea over their desk and it's ruined their entire day. I've also watched the news and seen people in war-torn Africa where their parents have been blown up and they've actually made a big difference in their life. It's turned their life around and they've really done something. Horrendous thing to go through. One ridiculous extreme to the other, I know. But the important thing is to think here, hang on a minute, what's happening to us is happening, end of story. How are we going to deal with it? Because believe me, there are plenty of people out there that are dealing with it in totally different ways than we are. And that could be a more positive way or a negative way. What do we need to do to get our mindset in a place whereby we're able to deal with it though? So the number one thing, sleep, a good night's sleep. I went to the Business Excellence Forum, a national event up in Telford a couple of years back. Owner of Green and Black's Chocolate, Joe Fairley, someone said to her, how do you cope with the difficult times? And she said 3 words: good night's sleep. So if you're staying up late, especially if you're watching the news really late, it's a terrible idea. If you're doing that, grab a pen, make a note of it now, stop doing it. It's a really awful idea. It's not going to help you. Getting to bed at a reasonable time, waking up at the right time, creating a routine is going to help you. If you've had a bad night's sleep, would it be fair of me to say that the next day is usually pretty bad, that we're struggling more? I would argue that it definitely is, for me anyway. So we've got to do our best. If we can't sleep because of the situation, hopefully some of the ideas later on in this webinar is going to help you. Next thing, exercise. It's something I think that half the people are going to come out of this situation fitter and the other half fatter. I think my wife's doing quite well. She's been running 14K runs. Having not run at all really before we went into lockdown. I've got some way to go on that. I need to take a spoonful of my own medicine on that, to be honest with you. Diet, really important as well. I would say not as important as exercise though for mindset, and I'll tell you why. Diet is really important to make sure that it's the 1% rule, isn't it? Is if you look at your diet, and you eat healthily, you get 1% better every day. If you exercise now, you're going to get endorphins boosted, moving around your body immediately. That's going to help your mindset right now. So I'm a big believer in exercise. Hydration, make sure you're drinking enough. I'm likely to get a dry mouth during this webinar, so at various points I'm going to need to stop and just take a quick drink. Really important for mindset as well. Meditation, not for everyone, I know, but if you haven't given it a go, there's a great app called Headspace. That's Headspace on your phones that really, really good and really helps people relax, focus on the present, and just try to change the way they think. If you haven't given it a go, do it. It's not for everyone, I get that. Your environment, really important. And we can go over that a bit later on. I know some of you are stuck at home. Nearly all of you are stuck at home. You've probably got kids you're homeschooling at the same time. Very, very tricky. So we'll come up with some ideas around that a bit later on as well to try to improve your environment, which is going to help you dramatically. Creating a plan. If we haven't got a plan, we don't know where we're heading. And the biggest problem with that is affecting our mindset. So if you haven't got a plan, make a note, grab your pen again, write down, create a plan. If you need help with that, that's something I do for a living. I help people create survival plans for their business and also plans for the longer term as well. This is something that's quite interesting that I didn't used to do until 2 years ago. So would it be fair of me to say, if I could have a quick show of hands actually, would it be fair of me to say that we talk to ourselves quite regularly? A few hands going up there. In fact, most of the hands going up there. I think all of us, it's fair of me to say that really that all of us talk to ourselves. Now, would it also be fair of me to say, I'm going to lower all the hands. All the hands are now lowered. I'm going to now ask you this, a different question. I'd like you to raise your hands as well. Would it be fair of me to say that most of the self-talk is actually negative? Let's be honest, guys. Fantastic. Most of it is. That is exactly what I thought. The key issue with that is how are we actually countering that negative self-talk? And the way that I've learned to do it is by creating affirmations or I am statements. So if there's something that I'm being a bit negative about, so say for example, for argument's sake, I'm terrible at sales. I want to be a great salesperson. If you're telling yourself all the time in your head, I can't do this, I'm no good, I'm not confident, what's going to happen? That's just going to affect your mindset negatively. You're going to spiral downwards. If you can tell yourself, I'm becoming a great salesperson, I enjoy picking up the phone and speaking to prospective clients and helping them, yeah, it might be BS, let's be honest with you. But if you keep feeding your subconscious that, it massively helps. And I've tried it out over a 6-month period. And I can say from my point of view, it helps. I know it's not for everybody. I get that. If you don't do it, if it's not for you, if you think it's Americanized rubbish, try it anyway. What's the harm? If there's a 5% chance it's going to help you, I want that 5% on my side. That's the way I look at it. It doesn't cost anything. It's really easy. If you need help to understand that, then please let me know. So I'm going to lower all your hands again now, and we are going to move on. Next thing. So now we've got our mindset sorted. We've put practical steps in place to help ourselves improve cash flow. Now, for any business owner out there that is not in control of their cash flow right now, the cash flow forecast is absolutely imperative. Richard Branson said it before, never take your eyes off the cash flow because it's the lifeblood of the business. Everyone's heard the expression, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash flow is king. It's always been the case. It's especially the case now. Excuse me while I have a quick drink of tea, one sec. So a business and a personal cash flow forecast is what you need. If you've got 6 months overhead in your bank account, this isn't quite as relevant as some of the other things I'm going to go on to talk about. If you haven't got 6 months cash flow in your bank account right now, overhead that you can pay off, knowing that if you don't receive anything in for the next 6 months, this is something you need to do. Now, I don't think realistically that we're going to be in this for 6 months. I think 3 months is going to be, most businesses are going to get back to some semblance of order within 3 months, assuming they've got the cash in their bank. If there's anything you can do at the moment to help your cash flow situation, you need to be doing it. I know some of you are already. I know some of you are making great steps. If cash is the number one thing that's important to you at the moment, ask yourself this question now, guys. What percentage of your time are you actually spending in an effort to increase the cash in your bank account? Some of you, believe you and me, they are going to be saying, oh, I'm only really spending 5% of my time looking at cash flow and trying to improve my situation. And I find that quite frequently. The areas of business that sometimes we're weakest in, we're not actually spending the most amount of time in. And that's maybe because we're scared of it. We don't know how to start. We just need help. I'm more than happy to run through with anybody after this call, any of the people on this call, 60 people we've got here now, how many, anyone that wants a cash flow forecast, I can help them talk them through a rudimentary one, which is going to really help them. adopting a negative side of realism mindset, terrible thing to say. When I'm helping clients with sales and marketing side, I'm actually adopting a positive side of realism. But when we're looking at cash flow, we need to plan for a worst case scenario. So at least it gives us a kick into taking action to resolve that problem. Like I say, adapting for different scenarios. With furloughing, that is going to affect your cash flow forecast. Once the government have funded your business and paying 80% of your employees' wages, we know that that is going to affect the cash flow forecast. Every single week, this needs to be done at the moment, guys. Like I say, if you haven't got 6 months cash flow, in your accounts, you need to be doing this every week. And it doesn't matter whether you're an HR business, whether you're an accountancy practice, whether you're a builder, you all need to be doing this. And it is arduous. I know that the 80% of the people that I'm working with at the moment don't like numbers at all. But believe me, you don't want to let that be an excuse for your business going down the pan, right? Really important we get in control of this. I've put there 3 months over in the bank's the aim. Now, 6 months is the ideal. 3 months is really what I've always made sure all of my clients have managed to get in their bank every single month, every single time I see them. I want to see 3 months overhead in their bank account. Really important. Communication. This is something I have seen hasn't been that great, to be honest with you, and I'm really disappointed. This is the time we need to be communicating quicker than ever. So this was a quote by a lady that runs the Crisis Ready Institute. When it comes to crisis communication, so you always focus on building a relationship with your customers, fans and followers, you will always find yourself communicating in the right direction. The problem I'm seeing is that the world's changing rapidly and our communication isn't. So how's that helping? The number of businesses that tend to suffer anyway, regardless of the fact that whether there's a crisis or not, often do so because of horrible lack of communication. We'll go through this. So communicating with your team, this could not be more important. You need to be communicating with your team on a daily basis, especially if they're working remotely. Because if you're not doing that, they're going to have doubts, they're going to read into things, they're going to work things out for themselves that aren't necessarily true, and your message isn't getting through to them. Every single day, you need to be communicating with your team. Now, I know there are one-man and one-woman bands out there. Those people have still got a team because you've got suppliers, you've got people that you work with that are actually part of your team, even though you don't necessarily think of them as an in-house resource. Your customers, making sure, this is one thing that I don't understand. Okay, so immediately after this happened, everybody started to put, send a single email out to all their customers, a bulk email to say, we're still in business, this is what we're doing, we're adhering to social distancing regulations, blah, 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 blah. Lots of people did that. Not everybody, by the way. So if you haven't done that, that's something. Grab your pen again, make a note of it, make it happen. Really important. Then the communication stops. And I'm thinking, okay, so the world's changing quite rapidly. Why is our communication stopped? And it's almost been a sort of a fight, flight, or freeze mode. We've frozen. We thought, right, okay, well, if we don't do anything, this thing will probably go away and we'll probably get through this somehow or other. And that's not true. We need to be communicating with our customers, not necessarily every day. However relevant is excuse me, I'll start again. I'm getting words muddled up here. The importance is when it's relevant, you should be communicating. That's the most important thing. So your networks as well. Maybe you've got social networks, obviously LinkedIn, Facebook, offline networking meetings that have now gone online, like BNI, FSB, any of the local networking meetings that you've been a part of. Really important. Your suppliers and your stakeholders as well, critically important. They need to be aware of what you're doing at the moment to address the situation that's currently happening. Your community as well. Anyone you're working with, any charities you're working with, anyone that needs to know what you're up to, you need to tell them now. So I know full well that after this webinar, you're going to have stuff to do for the rest of the day, right? You might not get a chance to actually make a note of any of these action points and action any of the action points, sorry. The important thing to do after this webinar is to make a note in your diary. At the end of the webinar, I'm going to ask for you all to actually submit a feedback form to me, by the way, as well. 9 quick questions just to find out exactly how we could improve this webinar. So I'd like a commitment from all of you just to send that feedback form back to me, because that's the only way we can help other people and we can help you as well. So I'd love you to do that. I'll be emailing that through along with a recording of this webinar afterwards as well. The fourth step, be positive. Really easy for me to say, right? Really easy. So what can we actually do to be positive? This was an interesting quote by JFK. So the Chinese using 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger and the other for opportunity. So in a crisis, yeah, we need to be aware of the danger, recognize the opportunity as well. Very interesting. Panic and worry never helps. Easy to say, don't worry, but hopefully some of the mindset tips I've given you already are going to help you get in a situation where you don't have to worry about worrying, if that makes sense. Looking for small wins every hour. This could be a little mindset tip in itself, really. Every hour, actually looking for something that's gone well, or at least every day. One of the things I do is I answer questions to myself every single day. Sounds like I'm a crackpot that I like talking to myself all the time, but it's working okay so far. So I'll always ask myself the questions, what's my biggest win been today? Now, sometimes over the last few weeks, it's been really tough for me, for everyone else on this call. The important thing is that we recognize our biggest win that day and make a note of it. So if that's something that you think is going to help your mindset, making a list of all your wins every single day to make sure that when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling down, you're not that great, you can look at your wins and think, well, actually, it's not been that bad after all, because the negative side of our brain, the side of our brain that's most related to a chimpanzee, is basically screaming at us all the time, fight, flight, or freeze, and it's not helping us. So what we need to do is talking to ourselves and reminding ourselves of what has gone well, even if they've been something small, it doesn't matter. How can I sell loo rolls? Stupid comment, right? Because I know that that's not what you're all going to be doing. But having a think about how you can pivot your business, how you can change what you're doing, not necessarily what you're selling, who your customers are, it might be the marketing. We can go and cover that off in a minute as well. Sometimes less news is better. I mentioned this earlier. I understand the need to be aware of what's going on in the world. I get that. I look at the news myself, I'm not going to lie. But what I don't do is watch the news just before I go to bed, because that affects my sleep. I don't think it helps. The majority of the news is negative. That's what sells. That's what people want to see. I don't know why. And again, in the early morning as well, waking up, checking your social media, how many people died last night, that's not helpful as well. I had an argument with a friend of mine about a year ago, and he said to me, well, knowledge is power. And I said, yeah, it is, but only if you're doing something with it. If it's something you can't actually control yourself, what are we wasting our time on? We need to be focusing on, as business owners, what we can control and not what we can't control. So obviously, we're going to need to know about social distancing. We're going to need to know about, when it's okay to come back to work and stuff. Believe me, if you didn't watch the news at all, you would find out. Someone would tell you in any case, right? So we really do not need to be spending really any more than 20 minutes a day watching the news. I personally, what I like to do is look at it in the middle of the day, because if I look at it at the start of the day, it might create an air of negativity around my morning. And if I watch it just before I go to bed, it creates a negative night's sleep. So I don't think it's helpful at all. If it's not an issue for you, carry on doing it, but just be aware of it. It's really important. The cycles, this thing is temporary. It's not going to be there forever. We need to be thinking ahead now, because if all we're doing is focusing on the here and now, we're not going to get very far. Really important. Winter, some people might argue we're in winter at the moment if we looked at the 4 seasons, if we compare this to the 4 seasons. We're not sure where we're going, things are tough. We're not sure what's around the corner, but we know spring's around the corner, right? We know that every single difficult situation this country and the world has ever been in, there's been positivity around the corner. So let's not get bogged down and tied up thinking, oh, the world's come to an end, it's never going to change, it's all going to go back. I mean, I was speaking to there's a guy that works outside my office in a food van, and he was saying, oh, food shortages, can't get the food from the wholesalers. And I said, yeah, that's because people are stockpiling, right? He said, yeah, he said it's terrible. I said, the good news is that will change, because once people have got enough food for themselves, their cupboards are going to be full. They're not going to want anything more. And he was arguing, I couldn't get through to him, but surprise, surprise, it's not that bad now. So we've moved through the cycle in terms of at least the panic buying, right? summer's around the corner as well after spring, and then we move back to autumn. This is cyclical. We are going to move into another recession. 7 to 10 years time is usually the average, and it probably won't be a pandemic. It might be, it could be anything. It could be the financial crisis that we had back in 2008 that we took our company through. We don't know what that crisis is going to be. We need to be prepared for every single recession or downturn in the economy until we stop working. Really, really important. And as far as I'm concerned, most people haven't been, and that's why the mass hysteria has taken grip. Looking at change now, excuse me for 1 second. The only constant in life is change. Getting ahead of the change. So like I said, thinking one step ahead. Where do we want to be when we step out of isolation, when we step out of lockdown? Leading the change. Now, what I mean by that, a lot of people confuse leadership with management. And the simplest way I can explain that is working out where you want to get to and making sure that your customers, that your clients, that your staff, that your suppliers are actually aware of where you're heading and how you're going to be getting there and how you're going to take them with you. That way, they actually understand what's going on. You're showing them the way out of this thing rather than being part of the mass hysteria. That's really, really important. If there's anything you can do to lead better, if you're not sure how to lead throughout this, there are books galore on the subject. I help some of my clients on exactly this subject as well. Now, this is something you will never have seen before. So grab your pens. This is going to help you. So this is the formula for change. This isn't something you'll see in any textbook at school, university, or whatever, but these are the things that in order to get people to change, whether this is you or whether this is other people, 3 things need to happen. So the D stands for dissatisfaction. That's dissatisfaction. So if someone is not dissatisfied with the current situation, they're not going to change, right? So they need to be dissatisfied. You can't make people more dissatisfied, but you can at least ask them the questions to get them to realize their own state of mind and stop sweeping things under the carpet anymore. Dissatisfaction times V for vision. Vision. Now, just because you're really upset, unhappy about a situation we're in, if you haven't got a vision of where you're going to, where you're actually heading, you're never really going to want to change. So the dissatisfaction it should be enough to get you to want to change. But in my experience, if people don't see a vision of where they want to go, they're not going to change. So it's really important that when you're trying to lead people into change, into the way things are now and into the way things are going to be, you need to understand and they need to understand their dissatisfactions and the vision of where they're going. And the next step is the first steps. So some people understand what needs to be done. Some people understand where they're going. Some people understand why they're annoyed and hurting at the moment, but they don't understand how to get there. They don't understand the first steps they need to take to get there. So if you haven't made it clear to your clients, for example, what they need to do to start working with you again, we're going to cover off marketing and the sensitivity around sales and marketing later on as well. So don't forget that. The final letter is R for resistance. So there's always going to be resistance to change. So just go over this again. Dissatisfaction times vision plus first steps has got to be greater than the resistance. So this applies to any change in life, whether you're buying something, whether you're selling something, whether you're changing from office to home environment, anything. All of those things need to be in place for change to actually happen. Hopefully that's helped sort of encourage people to think about the way they're selling at the moment and what they need to do. So the things that you can look at changing at the moment, someone said to me yesterday, the owner of a large networking group said to me, he doesn't think it's a great idea for people to change their value proposition, what they're actually known for. So it doesn't have to be that. Some people have done that and they've done it successfully. But have a think about what you're actually selling at the moment, what you're famous for at the moment. Is it your product, your service? You might want to change your pricing. Now, I'm not saying you need to discount heavily just because of the situation we're in. But all I need you to do is have a think about it. What could you do differently? It needn't be discounting your pricing. It might be changing your payment terms. It might be offering people an opportunity to pay later for something you're giving them now. Might not work in all your industries, but if it does, write that down. Changing your delivery as well. We can move on to that too, and staffing as well. I've noticed that a lot of people are having a rethink about the entire structure of their business. For the larger businesses out there, really, really important that you're all spending the time now to actually have a think about, right, okay, so were we in a position before lockdown where we were just working our butts off, working really, really hard, and not actually stepping away and having a look at the business? This is an ideal opportunity to do that now. Maybe you need more staff in certain areas, less staff in certain areas. One thing that I do with my clients is create an empty organizational chart for the next year, maybe a year ahead. What do you want your business to look like in terms of roles and responsibilities 1 year out? And then actually fill those boxes with the people that you've currently got, and then work through how you're actually going to manage that change, bringing new people into the roles that are not filled, and actually work out how you can actually still maintain and retain the staff that actually haven't really got a space in your organization at the moment, if that's possible. Sometimes people have changed their whole business. I'm going to go on to a really good story at the end, actually, of a lady called Jacqueline who's changed her whole business around, and that is doing really, really well. Breaking it sometimes, like I say, looking at absolutely every aspect of that business. What do you need to do to not just survive, but actually thrive, to take advantage of some of the opportunities that exist in your business? I'm just going to take a quick look at the time to make sure I'm not going over. That's good. So cutting back, this isn't something that everyone needs to do. This is a question I need you to be asking yourself. I'm not telling you to do this stuff, right? You need to just ask yourself these questions. So once you've done your cash flow forecast and you can see where you're at, and you've actually looked at the opportunities in terms of funding, whether that's from governments, banks, or what have you, and you still know that you're going to have to cut back to actually make ends meet to get through the next 3 months or so, let's take a look at some of the ideas that you could actually do. So like I say, cash is king. Stopping spending, it's quite easy to just carry on doing what you've always done, but taking a look at your statements. What are you spending money on? Where have you got standing orders, direct debits coming out? Are you using are there services you're using at the moment that you're not actually are there services you're not using but you're paying for? And I'm talking about personal as well as business. So for the smaller businesses, maybe you need to look at your personal cash flow as well. Could be important. Where can you reduce outlays as well? Really, really big. And then renegotiating. This is a great opportunity for us. So I've known a client of mine that's renegotiated with his service offices, and they've allowed him to have a 3-month holiday. This doesn't mean that they're going to be charging him for those 3 months down the line. They're letting him off for 3 months. They know that they can't get other businesses in at the moment. So it's going to be a really tough time for them. So he's having to go to them cap in hand, and he's managed to negotiate with them for them to allow him to have 3 months off without paying, which is absolutely fantastic. This is the time when you can do it. In 3 months' time, when you want to start renegotiating, I don't think that is going to be quite as easy. Slowing things down. There might be some services or products you still need personally or in business that you still want them, but maybe now it just isn't the right time. So nothing wrong with slowing that down and postponing that as well. Keeping marketing and selling, really important. I'm going to go on to marketing in a bit. I think I've had about 57 questions in the last 2 weeks about, I don't feel right about marketing and selling in this environment. It's not right. And I've got a very, very strong opinion on that I will be letting you know in a minute after I've had one more sip of tea. So bear with me. So extending credit, a Bob Hope quote, I love this. A bank is a place that will lend you money if you can prove you don't need it. So I think a few businesses at the moment are struggling. The coronavirus business interruption loans aren't necessarily quite what they seem to start off with. And I know that I've got funding partners as well, but also Joe might be able to help you at the end if you've got any questions on that. So Joe Bell, Kent Businesswoman of the Year that runs Bell's Accountants, she's on hand to handle any queries about this type of things, and she can certainly help. The next point is that there are certain people that are still lending at the moment. Funding Circle are a great partner, primarily because they're a relatively new business. They're well set up online to actually make quick decisions and act fast. So if you're not getting any joy from your banks at all, then certainly have a conversation with Funding Circle. I can put you in contact with someone who can help you quickly if you need to. Credit lines and credit cards, sometimes extending credit is easier than taking out new credit, in terms of, in some cases, not having to spend hours on the phone trying to get through and then getting cut off, but actually applying online. Personal as well, mortgage holidays being a great example. I know some people have actually taken mortgage holidays. be aware of what you're actually storing up, because you aren't going to get let off your mortgage repayments. You are going to be paying it back at some stage in the future. If you've got 10, 15, 20 years left on the mortgage though, those 3 months, the interest is going to be spread over the rest of the term. It's not going to make that much of a difference. And you can apply online, and it's super quick, and you don't need to hold on a phone for 72 hours to get through to someone. Refinancing if you have to, obviously, and finding the lowest rates. So rather than just ripping the arm off the first person that offers to lend you money, if you need to, look around for the best rates, because there are some rates out there that are reasonable. People aren't ripping people off right, left and centre. You can get decent loans still, but do it now, because in 3-4 weeks time the situation might have changed totally. So educate yourself now what's available so you can take advantage. Staffing cuts and changes, something which Maria from the HR department is going to go on to speak about at 10:30. So one way would be to cut back on hours. You know, we've heard of short time, and we've heard of furloughing as well. So one thing you could do is asking people if they wanted to take annual leave at the moment. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it might be an opportunity. If your work is, you know, if there's an opportunity at the moment for them to put down the tools during a period of time when possibly some of your businesses aren't as busy as they used to be, this could be an ideal time. So when you do get busy again, when you do come out of this thing and things do get crazy busy, they're there for you and not disappearing off on annual leave, because that was going to be really tough for you. Obviously, a few of you have had this thought already, either furloughing people all at one time or by attrition. Sometimes you just have to. Now, it's only after you produce your cash flow forecast that you're able to make sensible business decisions, logical business decisions going forward. The number of business owners I saw in the first week, in the first day or two, in fact, after we went into lockdown, making knee-jerk decisions, knee-jerk reactions, right, left and centre. I heard one business, 50 staff, just made all their staff redundant with no regard for employment law whatsoever, didn't even think of furloughing, just made a knee-jerk reaction, didn't have a cash flow forecast, didn't know that possibly was probably one of the worst decisions he's ever made in his life. You have to get in control of your finances before you make these decisions, and that's exactly the reason I put cash flow at number 2 on these steps rather than step 15. It is so important. Pay cuts are an option as well. I know that there are some people that have actually asked their staff to take a pay cut just to help get them through. The staff could realise that actually, if this is going to help them keep a job at the end of this all, they might be open to these discussions if they're done in a sensitive way. Maria is the queen at that. She can help you through that if that's something you're considering asking your staff. Make a note for that. If you want to contact, by the way, either myself, Joe or Maria after this, you're all going to get a feedback form, and you're all going to have the opportunity to tick a box to ask us to contact you, and we can all help you. Suspended bonus programs, that might be really important. Again, that's something that you need to have a chat to Maria about if you're not sure. Improving your home environment, assuming you're working from home. I'm fortunate enough to be in an isolated office at the moment, so I don't need to spend time at home. If I was spending time at home, I'd be with my homeschooled children driving me nuts, and my wife, who is a teaching assistant, that is going in and mixing with kids of key workers. So actually, I'm safer here. I probably should get a mattress in this office, to be honest with you. So the option from working from home when needed, or to try a different lifestyle without having to change jobs, is a win for everyone. I agree with that. This could be the new normal for a lot of people. They might find themselves working really effectively from home. Others of us, no, it's not going to help us at all. And we need to be working with people around us. It's whatever works best for you. But if you've never had the opportunity to work from home before, I think it's a great chance to actually test ourselves out, to see what's working and what's not, because otherwise we'd never know. For some of you, you're going to think, well, actually, I don't really want to work from home full time, but maybe one day a week could be good, because I am getting stuff done that I know I would have got interruptions when I was back in the workplace. So I know that hopefully you've all got the technology set up. I know you can all watch webinars, which is fantastic news for me and yourselves, making sure that any extra technology you need now. I was getting by without a headset for a while, and the volume was poor on the computer. So if you need to actually improve that, just go out and buy something. Now, we don't know how long we're going to be in for here. It might only be 3 or 4 weeks under lockdown. We might all be going back to work after that period of time. We don't know. But let's assume this might happen again. these headsets don't cost a lot. It's a great idea to actually help yourself get in touch with the world today and the world that might be around the corner as well. Meetings and reporting. One thing that I've noticed is that a lot of staff are struggling at the moment working remotely because of the lack of reporting and the lack of constant communication that I was going on about. So working out how you're going to create an environment around yourself that's conducive to meetings, that's going to help people conduct sensible meetings with action points at the end. Customer service as well. Is your home environment good enough to actually service your customers? If you've got dogs barking and children screaming in the background, that might be something your customers are okay with. I would hope that they would be okay with it, because we all need to be compassionate right now. But if there's any way you can minimize that sort of noise by moving to a different room, it might help. Banking as well, you need to be set up so you can get all of the information. Fortunately, we live in an age now where we can access information online very easily, but just checking really that you've got all this information. At least your mail is getting redirected from your office address to home. I think that's the key thing there. Again, I'll bang on about it until I'm blue in the face. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Make sure that you're able to communicate regularly with all of your guys from your home environment. It may be weeks or months. Now, like I said, I've got a feeling that sort of, I don't know, 4 weeks, I would say, we're going to start to be getting back into the environment that we were in before. Now, I know that that won't apply to all of your businesses because we're all in different sectors. Some are in manufacturing, some are in events, some own restaurants, and I know that's going to be different. So what we need to do is make sure that we are set up to work in this environment and to keep things going in one way, shape or form for the next few weeks and maybe a couple of months ahead, just to be safe. Now, this is something which is really important. Customer service. So there are going to be people out there, there are going to be people on this webinar now with customers who are still buying from them. We need to be doing our best to keep them. So every contact we have with a customer influences whether or not they'll come back. We have to be great every single time or we'll lose them. This is an opportunity for us all to show ourselves in our best light to our customers. Because I've noticed this before, when problems happen, when challenges arise, this is an opportunity for our customers to see how great we are at dealing with them. So forget about the situation we're in right now. Some of the best customers I ever acquired and kept during my old business were when mistakes were made at a customer service level. But we actually did our best to go over and above to resolve these, showed ourselves in a great light, fixed the problem, got reviews, testimonials, referrals galore, just because we'd shown ourselves how we can react in the environment we're in. And I think that's critical. Keeping all your existing clients is a must. Now, I know in some cases that's been impossible, but for the people that have got existing customers, that the importance is to maintain that relationship with them by communicating, by doing anything you can. Going above and beyond, like I say, and building loyalty for the long term. If you can't do what you were doing before because you're unable to, you're in the events trade, at least communicating with them, at least giving them helpful pieces of information which is going to interest them, maintaining and building that relationship with them, so when they are able to trade with you again, they can do it. That's not a problem. Virtual making visible. So obviously, you know, I could have done this without putting my my face on the screen, but I think it's really important. That level of human contact is still really important. So I think that using Zoom, GoToWebinar is preferential to using the phone. So if you can get hold of a webcam, then they're inexpensive and it gives you an opportunity to at least help yourself understand people better and for them to understand you. If 70% of our communication is body language, then unfortunately that doesn't help. So have a think about that. So critical non-essentials. This was a term brought around by a guy called Dr. Paddy Lund. He was a dentist back in the 80s, and what he did was he actually tried to maintain a great relationship with his customers by helping understand them better. So he'd take note of their birthdays and he'd send them a birthday card. He'd do lots and lots of little things for them. He'd read the notes at least before they walked in. So if there was anything they'd had a discussion about before, they'd been on holiday to Cyprus, or dreaming of those days, right? Being on holiday to Cyprus the previous time they visited, they'd walk in, he'd say, "Oh, how was your trip to Cyprus?" Because he kept information on them and he showed he cared. If there's anything you can do now to actually show you care now, or at least put a system in place of critical non-essentials, to help develop that relationship, that wouldn't be a bad idea. This is where the profit is really important. If we're losing our regular customers, that is going to impact upon our profit margin. So the next step, online or deliveries, not for everyone. Bear with me on this slide because the next one might be more relevant to you. So Ocado apparently had a surge in demand by 10 times. And the funny thing was, they weren't even taking on new customers in that period. So the average Ocado customer was doing 10 times more business. I struggled to see that myself, but I think because they had a lot of customers that weren't dealing with them regularly before. So if there's anything you can do to deliver your product online or your service online or your product by delivery now, have a think about how you can do that. That's something I think is really important. You could do it online or on the phone as well in some cases. You might need staffing changes. So I imagine that hiring delivery drivers now isn't easy. So if you need to hire delivery drivers, if it's something you might want to consider, dip your toe in the market now. I've got a contact who can help you in terms of recruitment. A guy, I think he might be on this call actually, Joel, who is a fantastic recruitment. He's not a recruitment agent. He can help you find the right person though. So speak to me about him if you need help finding a certain type of individual. If people won't come to you, you'll go to them. Loads of examples I've got coming up a bit later on of examples like that, which you might be able to benefit from, and you can take ideas and pitch them, write them down. Looking at ways you need to package your product differently, accounts you need to open, anything you need to change, you need to be ahead of the curve on this. And letting customers know you're delivering online. So I know there were a couple of businesses I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, and they said, oh yeah, we've got an online delivery system set up, it's fantastic. So okay, how are you telling your customers? Well, it's on our website. Okay, so how are they finding your website? Googling it. And then I Googled it and they were nowhere. So the importance is we're communicating. These amazing things we're doing are great, but we need to be marketing it effectively or there's a problem. So this is the bit that interests me the most, partly because I used to run a marketing agency, partly because most people are saying to me, I don't want to market or sell in this environment. I feel terrible about it. But this was a great quote. So for a business not to advertise is like winking at a girl in the dark. You know what you're doing, but no one else does. So the thing is, people are saying that no, that's fine, but that was for them. This is different. We're not really supposed to be marketing because it's insensitive. I think there was a colleague I knew about a week ago put a post out and something along the lines of don't hate business owners for marketing. They're just trying to keep the lights on, and it got a huge amount of engagement. Primarily because the way I look at it, if you've got a product or a service you're running, you're offering a great solution, you're offering great value to people, you are helping people, then I would make no excuses for marketing or selling that product or service. Now, I get that the message has to change. You can't market or sell in the same way that you were doing 6 weeks, 3 months ago. It won't work. The message needs to change. It's not the fact you need to stop doing it that's important. It's critical you carry on marketing through this environment. And I've got a story for you in a second of why that's important. So increasing it, not decreasing it. If you're not getting business coming through, why would you decrease the marketing? It doesn't make sense at all. I know why. It's because people are scared. But I know that the great news for you is that a lot of your competitors are also decreasing their marketing. So if you can start increasing it and you need help of actually how to actually market, just give me a shout. I'm more than happy to talk you through that and give you some ideas specifically for your industry and your business. Negotiating rates. This is great news for you. Facebook and Google are actually offering advertising at around 1/3 of the rate they were before. They've got an inventory they need to fill. And the demand's dropped heavily because your competitors have stopped marketing. So guess what? The prices have come down. If advertising on Facebook and Google hasn't worked for you in the past, again, I'm happy to have a conversation with you and talk you through how you can get started, even if you've never done it before. New offers and new rates, like I say, are coming out all the time on that. Measuring your 5 ways. I'll go through this really briefly with you. You need to be in control of your numbers, right? This is something we said earlier. Cash flow is really important, so we're in control of the cash flow now because we've done that on step 2. Now what we need to do is measure the number of leads that are coming through, your conversion rate, the average number of transactions per customer, the average sale value, and your profit margin. Those are the 5 ways that you can actually increase your business. If you need more help on that, I run an entire webinar on that I'll probably be doing again in 6 weeks or so, that I'm more than happy, if you tick the box on the feedback form I'm sending you afterwards, I'm more than happy to keep you on the list and invite you to that webinar as well. And this is going to show you ways that you can grow your profit margin. Getting cash up front could be a great idea as well. In some cases, just because I think it's a bit of a misnomer at the moment that no one's got any money, no one wants to spend it at the moment. Yeah, less people want to spend money. I get that. That is not for everybody. There are people out there that need services that you're offering now. They need products that you're offering now. Your job is to find them. How do you find them? Marketing. How do you market? Sensitively. I can help you with that. Repeat business. Every contact we have with a customer influences whether or not they'll come back. We have to be great every time or we'll lose them again. I'm just checking the time now. Okay, good. So we've got half an hour to go. Then we're going to move on to the phone in, where people are going to be allowed to ask questions to Maria, Joe, and myself. So the existing customers are your best customers. It's 8 times cheaper to get business from an existing customer than it is from a new customer. So if you haven't got a customer database of your own where you can actually work down and call people now, you need to compile one. This is really, really important. Now, if your customers only buy from you once, so I know that David, for example, is a driving instructor, they'll only buy from you once. Maybe they've got brothers or sisters, or maybe in other industries, maybe they've loved what you've done for them. They're prepared to give you a Google review or a LinkedIn review in some cases, and they're prepared to refer you to people directly. So what we do is we work with business owners on 12 different referral strategies. One of those strategies, by the way, isn't to wait for the phone to ring. That's not a referral strategy in my eyes. That is delegating the success and the future growth of your business to third parties. And lovely, it would be great if the phone rang all the time off the hook with people that have been referred to you. There is a way of actually increasing the number of referrals. In fact, there are 12 ways, and I can help you with those if that's what interests you. Creating deals just for first-time buyers, second-time buyers. Have a think about what you can do. Maybe not now. Maybe that's impossible right now. Maybe you can't deal with people right now because of the industry you're in. But maybe you can have a think about when they come back, hang on a minute, what could we actually do for first-time buyers to encourage them back a second time and a third time? 3 times is the ideal number, by the way, because what we tend to find is that once people have bought from you 3 times, the chances of them coming back accelerates greatly. So have a think about what you can do. Bulk buys. So if you're looking to actually generate more repeat business, if there's anything you can do to offer people more of what you're offering and asking for cash up front for a better deal, then why not? Have a think about that, but making sure you're keeping these guys at all costs. Just having a quick look at the time. Fantastic. Again, communication is vital. If we don't communicate with our customers, with the first and second time and third time customers, then they're more likely to drop off. So let's not allow that to happen just because of the position we're in now. The 80-20 rule applies. So 80% of your profit is going to come from 20% of your customers. The Pareto rule, which I was going to go over earlier, is something that's really critical. We need to make sure that we're isolating who are those 20% of customers and how can we find more of them? How can we market ourselves more effectively to find our best customers, more of our best customers? Using your time productively, really useful. At the moment, I think it's very easy to almost adopt a sort of a holiday mode for some people. I'd say 1/3 of the people I know are working harder than they've ever worked, and 2/3 are working less than they've ever worked. So what we need to do, especially for those 2/3 of the people, is to find areas, things that you actually can control and not focusing on what you can't control. If you can't do certain things now, we need to be planning for the things that we can do in a month or 2's time when everything's hopefully back to normal again. For the people that are working harder than ever, are you actually spending your time effectively in the areas that are helping your business? Are you spending it in the area that you're weakest in, the area that you're suffering in, whether that's cash flow, marketing, finance, HR, sales, operations? Have a think about the area that you need the most help in and make sure you're spending that time effectively, in those areas. Your future is determined by what you do today, not tomorrow. Very true. Have a look at your website. So these are just some ideas of things that you could do now, that if you're not sure what to do because you're at a bit of a loss, you're really struggling, they're just some ideas now. Have a look at your website. Has it got a strong call to action? Has it got strong copy on it? Has it nicely designed? Is it working at all? For some people, I've noticed that it's not. Are all the pages working on your website? Have you got reviews and testimonials on your website as well? What are you doing to actually show yourself off to the outside world? Because when they do Google you, they find your website. Is it something that you can be proud of, that you can be proud of, that's going to reflect your business, your values? Research and development, having a think. This isn't just for manufacturing businesses, this is for everybody. Is there anything that you could do? Is there another product or service that you could add to your existing list of services and products that is going to be particularly beneficial to people, to customers right now, or stepping out of this lockdown period? Have a think about that. Is there anything you could develop now that could be ready to go as soon as people are ready to spend in your environment if they're not ready to spend now? Google reviews, like I said, trying to come up with some more Google reviews, speaking to old customers that have been really happy with your service, asking them for a Google review. Most people don't bother with this, and I just don't get it. It's crazy. This is an opportunity for you to show yourself off and make sure that if there are one or two star Google reviews, they are countered by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 5-star reviews, which creates an average of 4.8 or 4.9 and makes your company look great again. Write a book, not for everyone, I know. There might be people out there that have actually got a bit more time on their hands that think, hang on a minute, I've been talking about writing a book for ages. There's an opportunity out there for me, especially if you're in the information industry. Creating online information or instructional videos. This isn't only for people that are in the informational industry. This is for people who maybe need to show people how they operate. You know, if you run a restaurant, for example, showing people what you do behind the scenes. People love those types of behind the scenes videos. Showing people how to use the product, a user's guide, if you like, to your product or service. Showing people exactly information on how you operate, where you operate, why you operate, everything. There are all sorts of things you can do. The great news for you is we've all got these. We can all take some very simple video that is of a very high quality. It doesn't need to be on the best background ever. The important thing is the content. How will you announce your reopening? Have a think about that. This is an opportunity for you to restart your business. This is a unique opportunity that you've probably never had before to restart your business. Now, that might be in 2 months' time. That might be in 4 weeks' time. What are you going to do to announce to your people, your customers, clients, suppliers, and staff, what you're going to be doing? Are you going to be doing something different? Are you going to have a launch party plan? Even if you know that you can't have a relaunch party at the moment, you don't even know what date it could be on, you could certainly plan it, right? That wouldn't be a bad thing. You could get all the ideas down on paper. You could work out who's going to do what and when. And the last block that you can't fill out at the moment is the date. If that's all you need to do, as soon as you know that that's possible, you can put the date in, start promoting it, because you've already created a marketing plan for your relaunch. The customer care system. So I mentioned earlier, Paddy Lund with his critical non-essentials. Sending birthday cards out to clients, just putting the system in place, even if it's just emailing your clients to find out when their birthdays are. Anniversaries of something they did that's amazing. Anything, just trying to put something in place that you can create a system that's hands-free that can work after this lockdown's over. New CRM system. If your CRM system is more than 6 or 7 years old, take a look at it. It's probably not doing what you need it to be doing. I'm more than happy to talk to people about their CRM system. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, by the way, sorry, it's basically a customer database that stores all your customers' information, but also it can help you with bulk email marketing. It can help you understand when you need to follow up, who needs to follow up, why they need to follow up, what they don't buy, what the customers don't buy at the moment, what they could be buying at the moment, those types of things. 16th step, this is the final step before I move on to the things that people are doing to pivot at the moment. So common sense and compassion, really important. We want to help people exceed their customers' expectations. So we want to over deliver on customer service. We want to make sure that we're observing social distancing. We want to make sure that we're providing hand sanitizer, really, really important. And we're actually doing our best to be compassionate at the moment, because a lot of the times you see a few people that aren't actually acting sensibly. We don't want to be lumped in with those people. We don't want to have our names all over LinkedIn as a company that isn't being respectful of other people's hygiene and safety. Putting people first, being nice and taking a chill pill. There are lots of people at the moment that are really, really stressed. Their lives are upside down, and I get that. But what we need to do is try and be nice to each other, try and be kind to each other, because that's the only way we're really going to get through this, right? And the final thing is, don't buy too much toilet paper. I think that that's something which is part of the compassionate side. Let's not go crazy with the panic buying. I think that's sort of come to an end now, hopefully. I'm kind of hoping it won't come back again, but we have seen it. I've seen it happen with the petrol crisis a while back now, and I know that's something which can create problems. So just out of interest, before we go on to this next section, where I'm going to talk about local business owners that are making a difference, could you all just type into your question box some of the ideas that you've actually come up with due to some of the things some of the action points that you've actually got, and then I can read a couple of them out. That would be really good. So I'm going to give you an opportunity here to go through that. What I want you all to do, regardless of whether you're going to type in all 5 of these points now, I want you all to have 5 points you can go away with. Now, some of these points are going to take you 2 minutes. You might as well just action them right away after this webinar, or you just need to make a note in your diary to make sure those 5 action points actually happen. And what I'm happy to do is have a complimentary call with you afterwards just to make sure that's happening. If you're the type of person, you know, you're great at coming up with ideas, they don't always happen, then I'm more than happy to have an accountability call with you just to check, A, you know what you're doing, B, whether you need help surviving at the moment, whether you need tips and ideas, or C, whether you just need someone to actually remind you to do what you promised to yourself you were going to do after this call. So just waiting for a few more to come through. Tony Locke's put other recruiters are available, Phil, just saying, quite right. Tony Locke is an amazing recruitment person who can help. So Simon has put changing his morning and nighttime routine. That's a really great point, and I think that it's a very easy thing to slip out of just because we're in a different environment now. So Mary's put offer a service to design social media posts for launch parties. Brilliant. Sometimes you find this with ideas that come up, people are able to twist the ideas that have been given to them and come up with a new spin on it for them. So that is brilliant, Mary. I think that's amazing. Tony's put contact businesses to find out who may be looking to restructure their business in the near future. It's a great opportunity. We know that that companies are going to be doing that. Kira's put start looking for businesses who have started up or changed direction as a result of this crisis, and look at pitching to them. 100%. Guys put, I'm lucky that I've managed to keep working for clients from home. I'm a consultant in the commercial side of construction, but I've started to get back in touch with old clients to keep bases covered. Really important. In terms of getting back in touch with them, it'd be interesting to find out, you guys, maybe at some point in the future, exactly how you're doing that, what your ideal outcome is, and how that fits in with your sales process if you've got one. Another thing I didn't mention actually during this is that hardly any businesses that I know have got a sales process. The ones that have got a sales process are refining it, are improving it all the time, are boosting their conversion rate. And what I'm doing is I'm helping people with that if they're not sure. Robert's put revamp database, MailChimp emails and calls to database clients, tweak and update website, improve my vision, add to my value proposition or elevator pitch. I think you've got quite a lot to do there, Robert, so that's fantastic. Another Rob has put, look at what your competitors are doing, using this information to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats and ideas for change. David's put, creating online videos, creating deals for existing pupils, updating photos to my website. Really good one. If none of you have written that down, that's a write downer as well. Get your pen out again if you've got some old photos there. I know of a couple of great photographers who can help. Looking at Facebook and Google marketing, looking at streamlining my self-assessment tax return. Again, it's not going to help us grow our business, but it's certainly going to help us, you know, when we've actually got a little bit of downtime to get that done. Make sure I aim for 1 win per day to help keep me motivated, Kira said, even though business is slower. And then Tony's put, create a smart plan. So I'm just conscious of time now. I've got a whole heap of other things I could have mentioned as well. So I'm really pleased that you've got some action points out of this. The whole aim for me is for you to step away with 5 action points. If you haven't typed them in, that's fine. Basically, what I'd love you to do at the end of this all is, as soon as we finish this, go through your list of notes, tick off the 5 things that you're committing to doing, and then email me and let me know what they are. I'd love to find out, because a few of you haven't typed in any questions. So I'm going to minimize the question box now. And what we've got now, oops, excuse me, I've nearly made a terrible boo-boo there. So I'm going to go through a few of the people on this screen now. Now, these are local business owners who have, some of which operate in really, really difficult industries. And they've managed to pivot, they've managed to change their business and do something different to allow them to keep the lights on, to allow them to keep running. So I'm not going to go through all of them because it will take me too long, but I'll just pick a couple of them out. So lady at top left of the screen, Jacqueline Gear, she is an import-export agent. So she's a local businesswoman, but she imports and exports high-end furniture from China. Surprise, surprise, that market died like it just died overnight, really quickly. So she thought, well, hang on a minute, how can I use my existing skills and contacts to help me still operate in this environment? She saw a need for PPE equipment. She saw a need for obviously surgical face masks, gowns, anything that hospitals and care homes needed. And she had a conversation with me, it must have been 3 weeks ago now, to say, look, I've got an opportunity to export 10,000 items at a time from China, but I haven't got any contacts. So what I did was I put her in contact with 12 or 13 people who could help. She had a load of other contacts as well. And I know that she's been doing that and making a real difference, not just to her business, keeping the lights on, putting food on the table for her family locally, but also helping the NHS and care homes get the stuff that they desperately needed at that point. And I think they still do. So I was really pleased to be able to help her with that. So Johnny's the next guy along, the guy, the thinner guy with the beard, second top left. He ran a gym. As we know, gyms have had to shut down. So he thought, well, what can I do differently? So what he's done is he has been sanitizing, firstly, all of his exercise equipment. Delivery drivers have been taken to his clients' houses, and he's been producing online videos to help them exercise, to stay in touch with them, to stay communicating with them. And he's renting his exercise equipment out at the same price as a gym membership. And that is hugely beneficial, not just to him, to help him keep food on the table, to help him carry on employing the majority of his staff. He's only had to furlough a small number, but also to actually make sure that his customers are still happy, are still working with him. So it's going to be a smooth transition getting them back to the gym afterwards, because they haven't stopped working with him. Phil Healy, guy in the middle at the top, he runs an events business, and he's obviously, all of his events have been cancelled. So he's looking to obviously run online events, but also what he's doing is quite a unique thing. He is putting on a drive-in cinema where social distancing's fine. People can turn up in their cars, windows wound up, so there's no breathing on each other. They can watch a film. They can stream the music or the sound of the film through the Bluetooth on the car, and it all works perfectly well. No problem with social distancing, and he's still running an event, which is absolutely fantastic. So sometimes it's the creativity of these people that's actually taken through this mess, rather than he could have just sat there and said, I can't do anything now. That won't work. Nothing's going to work. I can't run events. But what is he's doing? He's come up with ideas. If you're not a creative person, I get that. I'm not a creative person. I've had to pinch other people's ideas. But that works for me. I used to run live events. I put on an event at Bromley. It must have been, like I said, 6-7 weeks ago. 130 people showed up to that. And basically, I can't do that at the moment. So what am I doing? Running webinars. I've got 60 people on this one. I can see Maria's joined us. Hi, Maria. Hi. Maria's going to be joining us in about 12 minutes. We're going to answer some questions, and Joe's going to join us as well. So another person on this screen as well. So Barry Douch, bottom right, he runs a steel fabrication business. I've been working with them now for the last 9 months. He's producing screens for supermarkets. If I could just put you on mute for a second, Maria, is that okay?
Sure.
Or if you could put yourself on mute, that'd be great, just because I'm not sure how to do that. Thank you. What we'll be doing is, what he's doing is he's producing screens for supermarket checkouts to protect them from the public. Also producing hospital beds, still for hospital beds at the moment. I've put them in contact with someone yesterday to do that. So all of these people on the screen are actually doing something differently than they used to do to help keep their businesses running. Now, like I say, if you're not creative enough, you can't come up with ideas, you're totally stuck. I'm happy to have a chat with you. That's not a problem at all. On the feedback form at the end, tick the box that says you want to chat. I don't charge for my time all the time. So, you know, a half-hour conversation with me, I'm happy to have and help you. If there's anything I can do for you, I will. If I can't help you, I'll just put you in touch with someone who I think can. So let's move on now. I'm going to take, if you could come off mute, please, Maria, that would be absolutely fantastic of you. Maria is a lady I've been working with for, I think, probably the last, how many months would you say, Maria? Have I known?
Feels like years, Phil.
Feels like years, exactly. So Maria's an HR consultant that works for the HR department. Now, what I've found is Maria's been particularly useful for my clients because I've had questions fired at me that I absolutely do not know the answer to whatsoever, to do with furloughing, to do with how to manage contracts, etc. And I think that's a tough enough business to be in. Understanding HR issues is tough enough before this even kicked off. Now there's even more demand for Maria and her services because she can help us understand what we need to do. If we are making changes that I discussed earlier with our staff, we need to make sure we're watertight, we're doing things properly, and we're able to actually maintain relationships with people and take them to the next level. So what I'll do is I've got a couple of questions, Maria, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask those questions first. Sorry, I'm just going to go up on the screen. The screen's gone a bit funny. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the Q&A box again, which you, I believe, cannot see, Maria, or can you see it?
I can.
You can see it, fantastic. Okay, so these questions were ones that were asked to me a bit earlier on to do with some of the things I've discussed. If any of you have got staff-related questions right now, could you please key them into the Q&A box? And then what I will do is I will ask a section of those out to Maria. We've got a lot of people on the call. I want to make sure that I get through as many of your questions as possible. But just for now, there's one question that I had, Maria, from a client of mine. So while people are keying in questions into the question box, I had one question yesterday. So there has been a recent change in guidelines regarding holidays and furlough. Are employees allowed to take holidays while they're on furlough?
Thanks, Phil. Yes, so what we find is that legislation actually changes from one day to the next, so it's quite difficult to keep up with it. But there has been a recent clarification about holiday and furlough. So if you have got some staff that are currently designated as furlough, we now understand that you can also ask them to take annual leave. The caveat is that if you do take them to take annual leave, you must pay them the normal pay for the days of holiday. So you must top it up to the 100% of pay if you're currently paying them at the 80%, which is subsidized by the government. But it is helpful to you as the company because it would prevent you from hopefully having a big backlog of holidays when we come out on the other side and people want to flock to warmer climates and have a well-deserved rest abroad. So I wouldn't suggest that you maybe overuse it and you ask people to take weeks and weeks of holiday because nobody can go anywhere. So it probably wouldn't be the greatest of fun for people. But particularly in May, we have now got 2 bank holidays coming up, being the 8th of May and the 25th of May. So if your business ordinarily would have shut on bank holidays and you would require people to take those days leave, you can now write to them confirming that you are asking them to take those days leave. It's helpful to your employees as well because that means that they get slightly more pay if you're currently not topping up the pay for the couple of days, and you can manage your outstanding holiday entitlement at the end of it.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much. So keep the questions coming into the question box. I'm happy to relay those to Maria. So what we're going to do is after about 15 minutes of Maria speaking, we're going to have Jo Bell on, and she's going to help answer some of your accounts questions. So actually, I'm more than happy for you to throw into the question and answer box any accounts-based questions, cash flow related questions. I know some of the comments, some of the answers that Maria will be giving will be relevant for probably about 2/3 of you. The third that they're not relevant for because you're one man or one woman band, stay on the call, because I know that Joe's got some great ideas for you as well. So so in terms of there was another question we had, which was so what can I do to protect the well-being of my team during this time, which some are finding stressful? That's a brilliant question.
Yeah, it's really hard now, and I think we all had to adjust one way or another, either through homeschooling or working from home and using all this weird and wonderful technology. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never done a webinar before this thing started, so we are all learning and kind of embracing the new normal. And understandably so, some people are feeling really anxious. So it's either that they're working from home, they maybe feel isolated, or they have to work particularly hard because maybe a proportion of your workforce is furloughed and they have to double the effort. Or maybe, in fact, they have been furloughed and they feel really insecure about the future and what's going to happen after. So I think the key is always communication. I'm sure, Phil, you had mentioned it through your webinar. Just keep talking to people, keep them updated. And even if you furloughed people until the end of June, don't just forget about them until the end of June. Make sure that you keep communications open and you update them as to what's going on. They cannot do any work for you, but that doesn't mean you cannot communicate with them. Make sure that you kind of maybe have one-to-one private chats on Zoom or Teams, or even just normal phone calls, so that people feel like they've got somebody to speak to and they're not totally isolated. Prevent burnout. So it's also really easy, and I know I'm guilty of it. Your laptop is now always here in front of you if you're working from home. So it's easy to be working all hours in the day and night, and also weekends. So make sure that you are strict with yourself and with your team to encourage that they've got some sort of cut-off time where they actually take a bit of downtime and relax, because we all need to look after our well-being. And then socialize. I mean, I'm sure we have all done bingos, quizzes, and other weird and wonderful stuff on Zoom. But it is really important to still keep the team spirit up. We were due to celebrate our end of year big celebrations in London. So instead we just had some Zoom drinks. It wasn't quite the same, but we still had an opportunity to see everybody and see the kind of pets and kids and so on. So just keep communicating. And then maybe consider Mind, the charity Mind has got really good resources, and they've got on the website a form called a wellness action plan. And if you have got somebody who you know might be struggling with mental health, with stress and anxiety, in quite an extreme way, then that's a really good form to sit down with them, have a chat and get them to complete. And I'll give you an understanding how you can best support them to get the best out of them during this time.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. I think the only thing that would really damage my mental health at the moment, Maria, is going through more of those quizzes. I think I'm doing about four a week at the moment, and I'll be honest with you, I've had enough of them. I'm almost looking forward to someone saying, let's do a karaoke one.
Yeah, I know.
Even though I know that's probably not going to work out too well either. There's another question. So Tony came up with a great question. By the way,
Yep.
If any of you have got questions, I've noticed there was another question that came from an anonymous attendee. That's a great point. There are certain people who don't want their questions to be broadcast on a webinar, with the exception of Tony, who's put his name on there. Anyone else that wants to relay a question to Maria or to Joe, even if you're not sure of how to make it anonymous, I promise you I won't be reading your name out, because I know that some of it is relatively private, but you just want an answer anyway. So, but the question was, if a business was looking to make redundancies, would they be allowed to start the process all the while the employee is on furlough?
Oh, Tony, $1 billion question. We've been wondering about it for a long time. And actually just this morning, I received some clarity on this. So we were slightly unclear, the guidance was unclear, whether if you commence redundancy consultation with your staff, that might break the period of furlough and that might make you ineligible to claim. We've now got some clarity on this. It's not from the guidance, but it's from the interpretation of the guidance. So please do bear that in mind. However, what we understand that yes, you can start consulting with people. It shouldn't bring furlough to an end, because you're not asking them to do work or work related. It's kind of work related, but not actual work or activity that will bring revenue to the business. So you should be able to have those meetings virtually now that you are not able to have face-to-face meetings, and then serve them notice after following due process and so on, and for that notice to run for the remainder of the furlough. Now, let's say you make somebody redundant for argument's sake next week, making sure you allow enough time for consultation. If the notice period would ordinarily end before the end of June, the right thing to do would be to extend the notice period to allow it to run until the end of furlough. so that people wouldn't be disadvantaged, because that scheme is there to protect people's earnings. So just bear that in mind. But Tony, if you've got some specific questions about redundancies, very happy to have a kind of chat offline, because it's quite a broad topic.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So one question here was, if you have some of your staff furloughed, are you allowed to top some up to 100% but not all?
Okay, again, really good question, and one that we have heard quite often from our clients. A difficult one, because we need to understand, or we need to still apply the same employment laws and anti-discrimination laws when selecting people for furlough and when choosing to top up pay. So I think general guidance is it's always safer to top up everybody's pay or nobody's pay, just to ensure that kind of we are all in it together. However, if you can come up with justifiable objective criteria as to why you're topping up other people's pay. So for example, you might have a vacancy or role within your business that is very niche and would be very difficult to replace if that employee was to go elsewhere. And therefore, in order to protect your business, you really need to protect that role. It would then make sense that you top up that person's pay to 100%. But just make sure you don't do it because, for example, somebody's been with you for a long time and you feel a sense of loyalty to them. That might be slightly discriminatory on an age basis. So just ensure that you've got some really good, firm, objective criteria when you're choosing to top up pay.
Fantastic, thank you very much. So someone's put this is on the subject of the mental health thing. So it's not a question, but it's a great one. Last night we did a virtual pub quiz with staff, including furloughed staff. No work discussed. The host was an external person, put people into groups and made breakout rooms for them. It was fun, great turnout and positive feedback.
Oh, fantastic.
Brilliant. Sometimes we need to be a bit creative, don't we? And I think that was a fantastic idea. And we can't just carry on doing what we've always done. You know, it's Einstein's famous quote: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's a great example of doing something differently and getting different results in a more positive light. So congratulations for that. That was really good. Just a couple more questions for you, Maria, before I get Joe on to help us on the account side. Planning ahead, this is based on, so we anticipate it won't be business as usual for some time yet. How can I plan for the end of the furlough scheme in terms of my payroll costs?
Thank you, really good question. I think now is the time to really start considering what your business will look like when we emerge on the other side of it. And that's including planning for your cost and kind of really stress testing your business. It might be that the pipeline and the sales will build up slightly slower than perhaps they would have under normal circumstances. So now is a really good time, and kind of jumping on the back of Tony's question, to figure out whether you might need to restructure how you currently operate. So now is a good opportunity to consider perhaps resourcing some functions, automating others and kind of streamlining. So look at your processes, look at systemization and so on. Definitely look at outsourcing. And what I find also when I'm speaking to clients, we find that they operate with a streamlined workforce where they may be furloughed a proportion of the team. And they find that actually they work better that way. And that gives them an opportunity to review, could we do things differently? So definitely give some consideration to restructures and figure out what roles and what responsibilities you need within your business, and then take the planning from there. And I appreciate that there's a kind of human cost to this, and unfortunately there might be some job losses, but I think it's also really important that your business survives it and you can thrive, so that perhaps you can then grow when the pipeline allows you to do so. So definitely give it some consideration and then allow yourself enough time for consultation. Again, if anybody has got a particular query about restructures, redundancies, very happy to talk about it kind of offline separately.
Fantastic. And like I mentioned on the feedback form, there's going to be opportunity for you to tick the box to say you'd like to speak to Maria, and she's really helpful and generous with her time as well. So final question for you, Maria, before I bring on the lovely Joe, who I can see is up and ready, which is great news. So the final question for you, Maria. So, while I'm actually firing this question at Maria, guys, if you could type in any questions of an accounts-based nature to Joe, she'll come up with some great answers for you. She's really on the ball with this sort of thing. Anything to do with whether it's cash flow, payroll, anything, type it in now. You know, she's not the easiest person to get hold of. She's really, really busy. We're really lucky to have her on. So this is a great opportunity for you to actually fire a few questions at her too. So I shall, while you're typing those questions into the box, guys, I'm going to ask Maria. So I just wondered, how do you decide who to furlough if you have enough for one person in a team of 5, for example? That must be a tricky one, right?
It really is. So I would suggest that you apply exactly the same criteria as you would do if you were considering redundancies. So figure out which roles are critical for your business, which skill set is critical for your business, and then apply that criteria and really determine which role you could place in furlough and who else can take on that responsibilities. Remember that, for example, if you've got a number of people in the same role, let's say you've got 2 receptionists or admin assistants doing interchangeable roles, you need to consider all of the people doing the same role and then determine based on, again, objective criteria. So for example, it could be knowledge of certain systems or software, certain technical skill set. You can retain working for you the people with the core skill set and the best skills, because you need to ensure that you survive. And the people who have got slightly less experience or skill set, they can be furloughed. So again, everything comes down to justifying your decision making, keeping a good paper trail, and keeping it objective.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Maria. Are you going to stay on to listen to what Joe's got to say, or do you need to shoot off?
Obviously, I want to know.
Obviously. Fantastic. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
very
Maria.
much.
That's been really helpful. Like I say, opportunity for all of you to speak to Maria afterwards. I'm going to issue a feedback form, like I said. So thank you very much, Maria. I'm going to put you on mute. No offence. And I'm going to and I'm going to take Joe off mute. So thank you very much. That's been really kind of you. Hello, Joe.
Hi Phil, hi Maria. Thanks for that. I always learn something. I wrote some bits down from yourself, Maria. Listen, every time I listen to you, I learn something new.
Fantastic. So what we'll do, Joe, if it's okay with you, well, obviously, if anyone's got any accounts-based questions, as you're talking, I imagine more will come up. That's exactly what happened last time. So I'm more than happy for you to just keep typing in questions, guys, and then I can actually read them out to Joe when they come in. Now, I've got a couple already. So the first one was from someone that's just posted it on. Are there any good cash flow tools that can be used with Xero?
That's a good one. You know, we haven't found anything that completely works for us as yet. So we tend to use templates, so Excel templates. Not sure if anyone's connected with Richard Sumner as well of Spreadsheet Solutions. He provides some really, really good free resources on his website that you can go on and download. But if anyone would like a template that they can export from Xero into, please feel free to contact us afterwards. We're inquiries@bellsaccountants.co.uk, and we will share those resources with you. But yeah, we haven't yet found a perfect template software solution, but it's mainly because it's so bespoke for every individual business, you know, so you want something you can adapt.
Fantastic. A few of my clients actually, Joe, have had exactly the same question, one with QuickBooks, and they found the same thing. It's there have been a couple that we found that look, broadly speaking, okay, but they're not. We can't customize them to get them to do what we want them to do, really. So I've got something that I could send over to anyone who wants a basic template, just to give them a rough idea. Especially very small businesses with very simple affairs, I can do that for. If you've got a large business with, or you've got a property portfolio, then maybe you need something a bit more robust than that. But yeah, more than happy to help with anything there. So one of the questions that came up the other day as well, Joe, is would you recommend deferring paying taxes to HMRC?
So the 2 taxes that have been automatically deferred by HMRC is this quarter's VAT. So any VAT payments that were due between the 20th of March and the 30th of June don't need to be paid. And the same with the self-assessment tax that was due at the end of July. That's been automatically postponed till January. So those 2 things, you don't need to contact HMRC if you want to take advantage of that deferral. It will just happen automatically. But one thing you do need to do on the VAT side is if you have a direct debit in place to pay it, you need to cancel it, otherwise it will be taken automatically. And there are options with HMRC really to defer any taxes, so corporation tax, PAYE, it is a good thing for cash flow, obviously, to keep the money in your account for a bit longer, but we are encouraging people to proceed with great caution on it, because the thing to remember is that it does need to be paid at some point. It's not a payment holiday. It's not that you don't have to pay the taxes. So the risk is that obviously you use that money for other things, trading capital, whatever, and then you end up in a hole with the revenue, which nobody wants. They're very powerful creditor, more powerful than most suppliers. So you don't really want to get behind unless you know you have a plan. You know, if you know the boom days are coming for your business once this is over. You know, businesses such as hairdressers, I know that there's a lot of women that will be banging the door down to get back into their shops once all this is over. So if you know that that's the case, but if you're a little worried about the going concern, you know, the stability of your business, then it's a difficult decision to make. But I would consult quite carefully with your advisors on that.
And I, for one, Joe, am ecstatic about hairdressers reopening in the next 2 weeks, because mine's just gone out of control at the moment. It's a terrible mess.
I'm trying to stay high so people can't see my roof.
So yeah, that's actually both the first question and the second question sort of tie in with each other in that respect, don't they? Because if you haven't got a cash flow forecast, then you can't see the effect of actually deferring tax payments or not deferring them. And then you're making decisions without actually knowing where you're at to start off with, really, right?
That's right. The fear is just that it escalates, especially with something like VAT, because before you know it, that one quarter's over and the next quarter's begun, suddenly you owe 2 lots and then 3 lots, and it becomes difficult to get to a position where you've got that amount of surplus to clear it. But they have given until the end of next year, so potentially you could set up a long payment plan, but I would be looking to get that payment plan in place as soon as possible, as soon as you feel able, and obviously be realistic about that payment plan, what you can afford, because the last thing you want is to then default on the payment plan. So yeah, it's something to consider.
And then you've also got the sort of the working capital issue that I think you discussed yesterday in a networking group of, you know, it's there are going to be other issues that affect your cash flow as well, other than just the deferral of tax, right?
Indeed, yeah, lots of different things. And for example, people who are looking to apply for these business interruption loans, you know, they need to look very carefully at exactly how much they're going to need, because I think there has been a trend to underestimate the amount that's required. They might be looking at, say, their costs for the next 2 or 3 months, but what they're not looking at is the cost of bringing that business back to life once all this is over. You know, there will be a working capital requirement once all the government support's gone, furloughs finished, and everything is on us. So a bit like Maria alluded to, we need to start thinking about what that looks like, and making sure that we've got enough money to reopen again, you know, to restock, to pay our staff and all of that sort of thing.
Okay, there's a thank you for that. There's just a clarification question from Guy. So he said, just to be clear on VAT payments, his VAT quarter runs January to March. Does that have to be paid by first week of April, or is it VAT charged from 22nd of March onwards that can be deferred?
No, so it's basically we were a bit confused about this as well. It's very vague, the guidelines, but what it means is that it's any payment that was due between March and June. So if the payment for that quarter fell during that period, if you hadn't yet paid it, then you don't need to make payment. It's not to do with when the VAT was due to be filed or when you collected the VAT. It's about when the payment was due to be made.
Okay, fantastic. So we've added one in from Simon. So he's put, as a one person band, this might be the first year I make a loss after paying myself a wage. I've got good cash at bank to cover this, but should I change the way I pay myself from minimum plus dividends to a more conventional PAYE salary basis? Great question.
No. If effectively, it doesn't make any difference, because in order to be eligible for furlough, I mean, Maria may jump in here as well if I'm incorrect, but my understanding is that to be eligible for furlough, you must have been on the payroll prior to 19th of March, and the figures that you're claiming are historic figures. And that's to avoid that exact situation. So what the government don't want to do is people put, you know, their brother, their auntie, their sister all on the payroll, and claim the furlough money for them. So they've had to make it so that you're looking at figures from prior to when the announcement was made. So what you do going forward won't make any difference, unfortunately, to what you're eligible for.
Okay, and from my point of view, I noticed this in my old business, where they actually changed the tax bands and everything from in terms of dividends, the way dividends are actually paid, and you're paying is it a 9% tax on divs? Is it
7.5?
7.5? Okay, so maybe I was paying too much. Maybe I need a rebate, Joe.
I'll take a look at that.
So as I mean, I did a couple of calculations myself and saw that it didn't actually make a whole amount of difference whether I was paying myself salary plus divs as opposed to salary in any case.
The main downfall is the employer's national insurance. That's what most people are trying to avoid. So tax is tax on the part that you keep your income, but obviously there's a cost to the business as having you through as a higher salary because of the employer's national insurance, which is on top of the gross. So that's really what people are looking to avoid by paying themselves minimal salary topped up with dividends. Perfectly legitimate thing. You know, the government's demonised it slightly, but it's not. There's no issue with paying yourself in that way at all. You're a shareholder in your business. You're entitled to take your remuneration via dividends. That's your share of the profit that's been generated. It's just that, unfortunately, you know, if only we as accountants could have predicted that in 2020 there was going to be a worldwide pandemic and you'd have to be on the payroll in order to claim any benefit.
Yeah. Absolutely impossible to predict, and also even if you could predict it, you wouldn't necessarily know how the government would have dealt with it in the first place, right?
No, exactly. And you know, people have saved a lot of tax over the years by doing their taxes in that way, so you wouldn't have wanted to do it differently just to, you know, to claim 3 or 4 months worth of furlough, which is maxed out at 2,500 anyway. So you know, it's not that attractive in terms of what you would have lost by doing it the other way.
Gotcha. Thank you. There's a question that's just come through. So can directors claim the 80% if they've not done any income related activity during the government lockdown period? And if so, for how long, and how do you claim?
Yes, so there's quite strict guidelines about what you can and cannot do whilst you are on furlough, but they have clarified that company directors are entitled to use the policy. So you need to look carefully at the guidelines on the government website and make sure you're not in breach of those furlough rules at all. But you can claim up to the 30th of June. You can go online. You need an online PAYE account, and you can jump on there and you can follow the process to make a claim for furlough. We have actually put a how-to guide on a hidden page of our website. Because we are making claims for people, but because of the extent of the workload of that, we have had to make a small charge just literally to cover the staff costs, because it's weeks and weeks of work and we're not able to get on with the accounts and tax work that you know pays our bills. So what we've done, so that we're not sort of forcing anyone into a corner to have to pay for that service, we've literally screenshotted every individual screen and issued a guide so if people want to go on and do it themselves. It is complex. I'm not going to lie, the boxes themselves are relatively straightforward, but it's the calculations behind it. It's understanding how much of the employer's NI you can claim for. You've got to work out the pension element. You've got a pro rata salary. So if you've got people furloughing partway through a month, for example, the 23rd of March through to the end of March, you've got a pro rata to work out what the 80% would be. So it's relatively complex, and most people are preferring us to do it for them on that basis, just to make sure there's no delay to the claim and that it goes through correctly and they get their money in the 6 days that the government have promised.
I think that I haven't had to furlough my staff, fortunately, but if I did, I absolutely 100% would have spoken to you, Joe, because I know I would have made a total pig's ear of it. The forms were a nightmare. It just looked impossible to me. So there's no way that I'd have attacked that myself.
There's so many anomalies. You know, we've got people that trying to work out average pay, and then someone only started 5 months ago, or you know they're on maternity leave. You know, there's all this difference. So we're working very closely, obviously, with the HR department to make sure that we are getting it right and following their guidelines that they're sending out in their helpful bulletins all the time. But yes, if anyone does want access to that guide, as I say, more than happy to share that link afterwards.
Good stuff. I've got quite a detail-oriented question. So I'm going to read this out, and hopefully I get this right. So this is from an attendee on our webinar. It said, we had an arrangement to pay in place for our VAT that was due on the 6th of March. So the first install went out on the 13th of March, so half is paid. But we asked our accountant about cancelling the direct debit for the instalment due on the 13th of April And he said we could. Now, this person's worried because the VAT payment that was due on the 6th of March originally, they screwed up, unfortunately. Or does the 13th of April date of the second instalment due come into play so we're okay? That if that's a question that you're not comfortable answering now, I suggest that that person ticks the tick box on the form, or are you happy to actually answer it?
No, I can answer that. I'm a little bit concerned about that advice, and I'm really hoping that whichever accountant you spoke to HMRC about your specific circumstance and got their agreement to cancel that direct debit, because our understanding is that if there was already existing time to pay arrangements in place, those have to be adhered to. They cannot be amended. There is the possibility to speak to them and potentially extend it, but part of the terms and conditions of being given a time to pay arrangement is that you must adhere to those payments. Otherwise they can demand security from you and all sorts of things like that. So the automatic deferral only applied to VAT bills that fell due between the dates that I mentioned, March and June, and that's effectively for people who don't already have a payment plan in place. Or people indeed that do have a payment plan, but it's to do with this current quarter. It's not to do with payment plans that were already in existence. So I would just make sure your position on that HMRC are not going to come down hard for you not paying that direct debit or for you to cancelling that arrangement.
Thank you, Jo. That was great. I think as well that some people are under a bit of the misapprehension that just because the taxman or HMRC aren't knocking at their door now doesn't mean to say they won't be in the future. They're too busy right now, so the chances are you're not necessarily going to get any notifications for a while now, but they will come eventually. And let's take caution about that. And if you need any more help on that, obviously Jo's the person to speak to. So final question I've got for you, Jo, before we wrap up. So how do I work out how much I should borrow through the loan interruption scheme?
Right, so that is a case of making sure that you've done a really robust cash flow forecast, so you know exactly what's coming in and out of the account in the next few months, and potentially more than that. I mean, we would advise doing a cash flow forecast as far as 18 months in the future. I mean, it's quite difficult to do. Obviously, no one knows when lockdown's going to be released. So most people are sort of working on the basis that we're probably going to be locked in for kind of a period of 3 months, but there may be kind of peaks and troughs again where there's partial restrictions, but the main thing is obviously to look at your business at the point it reopens. That's what we need to do as well, and look at those costs as well. What are you going to need in terms of stocking, staff costs and bits and pieces like that. So cash flow management is a very important thing at the moment, and that will help you to understand your requirements in terms of the business interruption loan. And it's important to mention as well that cash flow management is not cancelling all the payments that are due out of your bank account. We had a few people sort of panic reaction and did all of that, but obviously the supply chain is very important to a business, and you want to be able to make sure that you're communicating with those suppliers. By all means, reduce all unnecessary costs. So we've got a lot of office-based clients that have been able to cancel their waste collections, their cleaners. You know, that's legitimate, those costs are not required. But things like your rent, you know, you are going to have to catch up on your rent, and the last thing you want is to get into a problem with your landlord where he's looking to evict you later down the line. You know, you're protected from that at the moment, but again, it's looking into the future. Do you want to be making sure that you're chasing up debtors, you know, anyone that owes you money? The important thing with cash flow is it must continue to flow. I'll try and keep the money moving if we at all possibly can.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully everyone's got some great ideas and answers from both Maria and Jo. And like I said, I'm going to make sure you get a feedback form at the end of this webinar, and you'll be able to tick a box if you want to speak to either of them. If you need any help at all, they're the best people to speak to. I've known Jo as well for a while now, and the advice I've got back and clients I know that I've got back from her have been second to none, as well as Maria. So thank you very much, ladies. I really appreciate you joining me. Hopefully we'll do this thing again at some point. And I shall mute you both now. You're welcome to stay on, or if you need to leave because you've got other engagements, that you're more than welcome as well. But I'm going to be wrapping up now, and I'm going to be just going over a couple of important things for the last 10 minutes or so. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Fantastic. So hopefully you all got some great ideas, and you've made some notes from those ideas as well, because we really do need to understand where we're at in terms of managing teams and also managing our finances as well. So what are your next steps? So the first thing is I'm allowing every single person on this call, regardless of whether they're a one-man, one-woman band or a larger business owner, or maybe they work for somebody else. I'm happy to have a survive and thrive call with them. So if you need creative input, if you need answers, if you need ideas of what other business owners that I'm working with are doing in your industry, then feel free to tick the box on the feedback form. We can arrange a time for a 30-minute call. And my aim is that you'll leave that call with at least another 2 or 3 ideas other than the 5 you've already taken from today. Again, I'm going to give you an opportunity to get in touch with Maria and Joe on that form as well. It's just a case of ticking a box, pretty simple. We've got your mobile number and we've got your email address already, so we can make sure that we contact you within the next few days about that. Now what I'd like you to do is grab your sheet of paper that I'm hoping has got a whole heap of notes on it, a whole heap of notes. And you're going to go through that now. In fact, you can go through it immediately after you've finished up. I want your commitment. In fact, let's do hands up just to make sure you're all alive and awake and well, that you're going to commit to actually making sure that you're going to be listing your 5 ideas, ticking them off, at least putting the note in your diary to do it. If you can't do it now, I get that, but making sure this stuff happens. The company that I bought a franchise in is called Action Coach. You'll see right at the bottom right of the screen. The emphasis on the word action. There's absolutely no point in attending these things, coming up with a load of ideas and then leaving the ideas in an in tray, even if you thought they were great ones, because if nothing's happening, you've just wasted 2 hours, to be blunt. Fantastic, getting loads of hands up now. That's really great. They're all going up like crazy at the moment. I can't keep up. So what I'm going to do as well on the email, where I've got the excuse me while the screen's gone a bit funny at the moment. Excuse me. So I'm going to invite you all to a WhatsApp group. I've got a WhatsApp group of 30 business owners that are using the group to actually inspire, educate and help each other with ideas, tips and tricks to actually get through the next 2 to 3 months. I think that's a really good group. There's no negativity on it at all. There's no self-promotion on it at all. We ask people when they join just to leave us a quick note of who they are and what they do, just so at least we understand that. But there's no self-promotion. It's all about helping each other with tips, tricks and ideas to help us through these next 2 to 3 months. I've also got an e-newsletter that I send out on every Monday. So I'll give you the opportunity to subscribe to that as well. It doesn't cost anything. I don't sell anything on it. All I do is offer help and ideas and guidance. Obviously, the stuff that you've heard today has been useful for now. Maybe in a week's time, the situation's changed, so I might have some more updates for you. And finally, any more questions at all? I see how much time I've got left. I've got 4 minutes left. So if anyone wants to rattle off any questions before we say goodbye to each other, I'm happy to field anything. Or if you've got anything to say at all, happy to read anything out if that's relevant at all. So if you're not typing questions in the question box, make sure you're looking through your notes right now, ticking off 5 things that you want to achieve within the next month, and making sure you've got a plan in place to make those things happen. Even if one of the ideas is just creating a plan, I think that would be a really good thing to have. So got a couple of thank yous coming in. So really pleased with the turnout actually today. These things aren't that easy to do compared to real life events, because like I said earlier, body language accounts for quite a large percentage of communication. So it's difficult for me to see you. It's difficult for me to understand where you're at and what you're doing. You've been unable to answer questions immediately like you would have been able to do if I was running this live. So apologies that I haven't been able to read your questions out immediately you've posted them, but hopefully you've got something out of it. And it's been a really useful use of your 2 hours. So I've had another one through. Thanks, Phil. Good stuff as always. Thank you very much. That's Mary. Today I'll be adding an app that will help me streamline my online part of the business. Thanks, Phil. Great session, great webinar. Thank you very much. I've got a lot from this and biggest takeaways to plan, Tony. I think anyone that hasn't got a plan in place for the next 90 days really needs to actually get that in place first, because it's all well and good having a list of ideas, but if you haven't worked out who's going to do it, when's it going to happen, how much is it going to cost maybe, and getting all the details sorted for the next 90 days, the chances of these things happening is actually pretty remote from what I've seen in the past working with people. Another couple of nice thank you messages. So really appreciate you all for coming. I run these webinars quite regularly, so if it's okay, I'm going to keep you on the list and add you to future ones and live events, hopefully, obviously, when we're back up and running. So all I've got to say is thank you for being one of the 20% of the people that are going to take action. You remember the 80-20 rule we discussed earlier. Hopefully you're one of the 20% that take action and not one of the 80%. So I'm going to email you after this. I will endeavour to get you a copy of the entire webinar, not the slides, the actual webinar itself, so you can share that with anyone. If you've got a business owner that you feel might be relevant for, feel free to shoot that over to them. I'll also shoot you the feedback forms in a separate email, and you'll be able to complete that. And thank you very much for now. Have a lovely weekend. Over and out.